Hi, Yvonne. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you. Would you like us to make the announcement about the interpretation line? Or do you,
No,
are you,
I'm gonna share my screen right now with the line.
And
And
also, oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
will continue to put it in the chat too. Because I know some
Okay.
people last night were asking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. No,
And
I know.
we didn't have access to the chat or to the question. Well, the chat is disabled, but we didn't have access to the Q&A.
Right.
So
Okay.
all I could do was answer on the same
Oh
platform.
gosh.
Hmm
Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yes.
Yes, and
Okay.
we're hearing, are you picking up an echo on Haley when she speaks, Yvonne?
Oh no.
Let me see. I haven't paid attention.
Can you hear me
Speak.
now? Speak, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
We could hear you okay, but it does have like a little bit of
Oh no.
I don't know if it's a
Feedback,
delay, a
like
feedback, a little, yeah.
something. Are you using, are
Headset.
you using a headset like
No,
ours?
no, I don't have one of those.
Are you
I
using just the mic?
just my regular laptop microphone. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's it. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we can hear you, but
I'm gonna need to ask for one.
yeah, it does make a difference, honestly.
I know.
Because look, if I take this off, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna take my mic off. Do you hear the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
Were you able to hear Fonzie and Rena okay the last two nights?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I wasn't seeing now that I put my equipment back on. My voice is much better.
I know.
So yeah. Well, I wasn't here last night, but I was able to hear
Oh,
them very well the first night.
okay. Okay. Let me see. You guys can still see the screen with the interpretation line pulled up?
Es simultáneo, marqué.
Yes.
Atención,
Okay.
4298.
Great.
Yes, perfect.
And I'm just waiting for our presenter now.
Excellent.
I'm realizing my video's not on.
So you're gonna say it in Spanish? No?
I think I just muted myself. Sorry. No, I was
Yeah.
not going to. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. I wasn't sure if that's how you did it the last two nights because I missed the introduction.
Oh, okay.
I just thought you wanted it on the screen and then I was going to continue to put it in the chat throughout. But if you want to say it, that's totally fine too.
Well, it's usually what we do. Yvonne, would you like to, can you take charge of that? Yeah. Yeah, you would just say, we're gonna make an announcement in Spanish, please bear with us, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And then Yvonne, you can introduce us, and then Yvonne will say, her spiel.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just go over the housekeeping items and then my plan was to then present it. So I can
Well, it
have
would
you
be best to
do it before.
before, so they
Okay.
can also listen to the housekeeping.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted, Yvonne. Did you say something?
Sorry. Yes. So that way they could connect and listen to all the
And hear it.
housekeeping.
Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yep.
Hopefully it connects. Does it connect pretty quickly?
Yeah,
When
you
they're
just
able
have to
to
dial the number and
put in their
enter the
password.
information. Yeah. I
Perfect.
mean, but you don't have to wait, but you know, as long as we first offer the interpretation and then continue.
And we
Perfect.
will already be in there when we're offering it. We'll already be waiting.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome.
No problem.
Thanks, you guys. Hi, Riley. Sorry, I saw you pop on.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well.
Great. Riley, just so you know, I just have this up on the screen for now so that families know that we do have interpretation available. But once I kind of go over housekeeping items and everything, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
And then Riley, at the end, when we do take questions, you are welcome to read the questions yourself from the chat, or I can read them for you. It's however you like to filter through.
Yeah, either one works for me. I think when we get there, I'll kind of pop through
Sure.
and then, yeah,
Give me
sounds
direction.
good.
Okay, awesome.
And Riley,
Well-
you're going to be doing the presentation. Hi, I'm Betsy. I'm one of the interpreters
Mhm.
tonight. You're going to be when there's if there happens to be a Spanish question in the chat, we so we can how do we translate it there? We can tell you, and if anybody asks on the bridge line, we can tell you. You know, you'll see our faces appear on screen. Don't pay attention to that unless we're talking directly to you, and then we'll say there's a question in the bridge line, and then we'll interpret the question to you, and then just answer in English as you would, and we'll be interpreting it. But if you see us turn on our cameras, we're just passing the baton. We're going to switch every kind of half hour, 20 minutes. You'll just see us. You'll see one of us going like, and then just nod to the other one. The other one takes it. So that's just our pass, our transfer. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
All
Thanks.
right, thanks everyone. Well,
And-
since it is, oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Yvonne.
And of course, about the questions, we would wait until the end.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, since it is 5:30, I am going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Haley Estrada, and I'm the College and Career Counselor at Santa Susana High School. On behalf of all of the high schools, thank you so much for being here tonight for our final webinar of College Week. If you have attended all week, I hope the presentations have been informative and helpful for all of you. Before we jump into housekeeping items and the presentation, I am going to turn it over to Yvonne to talk about the bridge line for Spanish translation.
Muy buenas noches. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos a este webinario para interpretación simultánea al español. Por favor, marquen 805-306-4500. La extensión es 4298 y la contraseña es 2258. Esta información va a ser añadida durante la presentación para que puedan tenerla más adelante. Gracias otra vez, Betsy Camacho e Ivonne Carrión. Estamos felices de estar aquí con ustedes.
Thank you. So the housekeeping items for tonight, hopefully some of you are already aware of them if you've been coming to the other webinars. The first is that this is a webinar format. We cannot see or hear you, so you are totally safe to do the dishes, prepare dinner, whatever you need to do. It is being recorded and it will be put on our district website, SeneValley.usd.org under workshops archives, and that will probably be up within the next week or so. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end of the presentation. So you can write your questions in the Q&A section and we will share them aloud as a group at the end. I do encourage you to wait until the end, if possible, to put your questions in the chat, because sometimes when we put them in too early, they already get answered. And so if we wait a little bit, you might have some of those questions answered. Please don't use the raise hand feature because we won't be able to interrupt the presentation if we see a hand raised. Let me see what else. Thank you so much, like I said, for being here. I'm going to introduce our presenter for tonight, who is coming from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and will be reviewing the UC application with all of us. And so without further ado, here is Riley Williams.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm going to start with sharing my screen just to get that all squared away. All right, Should be sharing there. Sweet. Okay. Does that look okay for everyone?
Yes, looks good on my end.
Okay, perfect. All right, then let us get started. So, hello, like was mentioned, my name is Riley Williams. I am an admissions counselor here, or at UC Santa Barbara, but today I'll be your guide through the UC application. So that's going to be a bit more UC in general rather than UCSB specific. So yeah, I know y'all have many choices when it comes to how you spend your 5:30 on a Wednesday. So thank you for choosing to spend your time with us and learn a little bit more about the UC application. A bit of an agenda, like was mentioned, we'll go over big picture pieces for the application, and we'll dive into each section step by step, about you section, activities, awards, PAQs, all those things that you want to know, and then we'll save those questions for the very end. So feel free to have your questions in the Q&A when we have some time at the end. And just to clarify, we'll be going over the first year freshman application tonight. If you have questions about the transfer one, I can answer that to the best of my abilities, but just know that there might be slight differences between the first year freshman application and that transfer application. All right, so without further ado, let's just jump right in to that UC application itself. So what is the UC application? In the UC system, we have our own homegrown application, and this is one single application for all 9 undergraduate campuses. So our process might look different than applications for other universities or other college systems. And so for the vast majority of applicants, this is the only thing that we are receiving from you and reviewing about you before making an admissions decision. It is that UC application that we're looking at. We don't do interviews in the UC system. Caveat here, there are some certain programs or majors that do ask for things like letters of recommendation, portfolios, auditions, supplemental applications, things like that. Just for example, the College of Creative Studies at UCSB has a supplemental application. Our dance and music majors have auditions for first years. But again, these will vary from campus to campus, and these additional materials are only accepted by invitation, so only if you're specifically asked for it. Otherwise, if you're not specifically asked, we're not going to be accepting any unsolicited material from you outside of that UC application. So your letter of recommendation from Oprah or your Elwood style admissions video, will not be accepting those or reviewing those in our admissions decision. So important dates up here to pay attention to as well. The UC application is open for submission from October 1st through December 2nd. So you should know that you do have some time to go and work on it. Don't feel like you have to go home and immediately submit that UC application, because the UCs don't have early decision or early action programs. So there's no benefit to applying earlier in that window as long as you make sure that you press submit by that deadline. This year, the deadline is different than it normally is. It's a December 2nd deadline, because our typical deadline of November 30th is a Saturday this year. It's a little bit close to Thanksgiving, so we've extended it a little, but just note that if you are someone who is not applying this fall but plans to apply in the future, November 30th is likely going to be the date that you're looking at. So just kind of some logistics squared away, but let's take a look at that UC application. Just a couple things actually first that I want to clarify. We always recommend to answer every question of the application, because we do use a holistic approach at the UCs, where we look at both academic and non-academic factors. And we do use almost everything you report in the application to make those decisions. However, there are certainly questions that you may answer that we do not and cannot legally use in our admissions considerations. So what you see up here on the screen, things like race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, legacy, demonstrated interest, anything in that scholarship section as well, we cannot use any of those in our review. They are just used for reporting purposes, for data purposes, after that admission selections happen. All right, so we're squared away on that. Now let's actually get into that UC application. The main event for tonight, navigating these sections. There are 7 sections of questions with over 100 questions total. So definitely make sure that you're taking your time on the application. You're going through it carefully. You're answering each question accurately as well, because there is very little that you can edit after you press submit on the application. And we also recommend answering those questions in order. There is a conditional logic in the background of the application. So that means the way you answer one question earlier on may affect what questions pop up for you later on. So again, making sure you're going through in order. Required questions will have that red asterisk that's next to them, and you'll get error messages if you don't complete those. We still recommend doing the non-required questions if you do have an answer to them. It never hurts to answer to them, and it can give you more context about you. So when you're logging in to open that UC application itself, you'll see this menu bar up here at the top of the screen. Application status to the very left there says where you can view all of your open or your submitted applications. It's also where you can go back to look at your application or maybe edit certain information after you've submitted. My account, of course, for account information, if you want to update or edit that, password, email address, that kind of things. And on the topic of email addresses, we do recommend using a non-school email when you're making your UC application account, because we do email you throughout the process into next summer as well, and we don't want you to lose access to that email account. Sign out button, you guessed it, you can sign out on there, and that help section will also give you some frequently asked questions that pertain to the specific section that you're on. And it also has the contact information of our UC Application Help Center if like any technical issues come up as you're going through that application. But moving away from that menu bar, you'll see on the right-hand side those 7 sections of the UC application. You can navigate from section to section using those tabs. Again, though, we do recommend going through those tabs in order. And then underneath each tab, you have subtabs. Very exciting. Again, you'll see both the required and optional questions in those subtabs. And when you have completed all the required questions in a section, you'll see a check mark right next to the title on the right-hand side. So if you're missing any information, this orange box will pop up and say, you're missing information. Fix this now or skip for later. So again, please make sure to read through your entire application when you're getting ready to submit it, because you want to make sure that you haven't missed anything and that everything is complete and accurate. And you should also be saving your work as you go. On the back end of the application, for safety and security reasons, there is a 20-minute timer that's built in. So after 20 minutes of no activity, it will log you out. It should save what you've written up until that point, but just to avoid any like additional stress, like worries of if you do see that you're logged out, try to make sure that you're clicking that blue save and continue button as you go along. That will reset that timer. Now that we have our bearings a little bit, we'll go to that first section of the UC application, which is the About You section. So you should be thinking of the About You section as if it's your introduction or your autobiography. It's giving us that contextual information to be able to understand who you are as a person, who you are as a student, who you are as an applicant. Again, you'll find that some of these are optional, nothing you put down in that application is actually going to be treated as a negative. Everything in your application is either going to be a neutral factor to your review, or it's going to be a positive factor. So never hurts to answer a question if you do have an answer for them. And so the application is going to ask you those pretty standard questions: who you are, lived name, where you live, how to contact you, in addition to some of those background details about your family or how you grew up. So here you'll really be able to give us those details that you might not think to tell us in other parts of the application, like whether you were multilingual or a foster youth or a child of a veteran or a first-generation college student and stuff like that. We do try to give options to be able to accommodate students of all kinds of different backgrounds. So for example, in the parent information section, you can also list guardians or step-parents. So again, try to answer these questions to the best of your ability. I know I've been saying try to answer as many of these questions as you can, but we do understand if there's some questions that you just don't have an answer to. And in this About You section, there aren't right or wrong answers. Though, if you do want to be considered for that in-application fee waiver, you must be answering those questions about family income and family size when prompted. The UC system and the UC application has this built-in fee waiver for eligible families, and you're automatically considered for eligibility if you report that family income and that family size, which is just the total number of individuals who are supported by that income. And then if you're deemed eligible, you'll be able to apply to up to 4 UC campuses at no cost. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. I do want to also acknowledge as well that the UC application asks students about their citizenship status. It asks about their social security number or ITIN if they have one. If you are an undocumented student, we just ask that you put no selection under that country of citizenship and then answer no to the SSN question, or if you don't have an ITIN or a DACA social or something like that. But to be considered eligible for AB 540 status, please also share if you have attended a California high school for at least 3 years and if you plan to graduate from a California high school. All students, though, regardless of citizenship, should answer these questions so that we can determine if you are a California resident for admissions purposes. For residency for tuition purposes, the About You section also contains this statement of legal residence. This allows us to determine for most students whether or not they're eligible for in-state tuition by the time they receive their offer of admissions from UC campuses. Although I'll say there are some cases where residency can't automatically be determined from what you report on that UC application, and the campus might need more information from you, so that might come up when you get that admissions offer. But to be considered and to be evaluated for California residency for tuition purposes, you will need to answer all the questions in this section, and then the residency deputies, not the admissions officers at each campus, will then review if you meet the UC policy for California residency. And so that's a good note. The SLR, the Statement of Legal Residency, is on the UC application, but admissions officers aren't making those tuition considerations. Those will be residency deputies. And then one last bit on the About You section, you can also input your California SSID, your California State Student ID, excuse me, which is a 10-digit number that's located on your high school transcript. If your school uses CCGI, California College Guidance Initiative, or is a TES school, then you can get at least some of your courses and grades pre-uploaded into that academic history section, but that's not required. You can also self-report them as well. So if you have any questions about the About You section, I encourage you to either write those down or put those in the Q&A. For now, though, we're going to switch gears onto that second section of the application, which is the campus and majors section. So again, on this one application, you can apply to as many of the UC campuses that you like. We will never know what other campuses you applied to, how many other campuses you apply to. We receive the same application from you, no matter how many campuses you apply to. We all receive that same information that you put down in the application. But the only difference is that we don't see what other campuses you applied to. We don't see what other majors you selected. We don't collaborate with other UCs when making admissions decisions. So when I'm reading your application, I am assuming that UCSB is your first choice campus, regardless of whether it's not. But, you know, why wouldn't it be? Seriously, though, never going to hurt you to apply to as many campuses as you want and as you want to pay for. We'll talk about fees in a second, but note that each campus also does have different majors, and sometimes majors that are similar can have different names. So make sure to go through those majors carefully and reach out to that specific UC campus if you do have questions. The beginning of the campus and majors section will ask you to just confirm whether you're applying as a freshman student, straight out of high school, not taking college level coursework in a non-summer term after you've graduated high school, or if you're applying as a transfer applicant before you're moving on to selecting those campuses. And then when you get to selecting those campuses, you'll see this lovely little map here where you can check the box next to every campus you want to apply to. Could be one, could be all 9 campuses. That's up to you. Your selection will also not be ranked in any way. But note that there is an $80 application fee for U.S. residents for each campus, $95 if you happen to be applying as an international applicant. And you'll pay for that when you submit, either by credit card or check or money order, or pay by mail options as well. If you are eligible for that fee waiver, you'll find that notification in this section. So again, that's why it's important why you fill out that application in order, because your eligibility is determined on that earlier question you asked in the About You section. So you'll see down here, it has that notification of you've qualified for a fee waiver. So now you may be able to apply up to 4 campuses for free. The remaining costs for additional campuses will also be calculated down there at the bottom. So if you have those 4 free campuses and you're making decisions on where to apply, a question one might consider pondering is, gee, where is the only UC campus that is located directly on the beach? Oops, that's UCSB. Major, of course, will also be a determining factor as well in making decisions based on majors offered. And for each individual campus, like I mentioned, you'll select a unique individual major. So you'll go through each campus that you picked and you'll be able to browse their major options and select your first choice and alternate choice majors. Unless it's UCLA, they don't have alternate choice major options. When you're browsing through majors, you can look through majors either by category, like discipline, subject, or by college. So if it was UCSB, you'd see our 3 colleges: letters and science, engineering, creative studies. For UCSB, we usually recommend students to browse by college because we have some majors with the same name, but that are in different colleges and different structures. So it can be a little different there. But again, that's up to you which one you want to browse through. Remember, you don't have to choose the same major at every campus. In fact, some UCs will have majors that are not offered at other campuses, so important to do your research here. At every UC, though, you will find an undeclared option. As a freshman applicant, you can apply as undeclared. At UCSB, applying undeclared won't affect your admissions decision, but that is a question you'll want to clarify with each individual UC campus, because sometimes that can vary a little. And sometimes the UCs, they might just have a general undeclared major, or it might be undeclared by subject. So for example, undeclared engineering or undeclared social science, something like that. UC San Diego here will also ask you to rank their colleges in this section. If you have any questions about that, I would be happy to tell you to please direct your question to UC San Diego. You're also going to want to do some research, though, about what we call selective majors at UC campuses. Different campuses may have different majors that are selective or competitive or capped for admissions. So space might be limited, or there might be supplemental material that you need to submit. In general, when you choose a selected major on the UC application, this little gray box will appear that you see here. And I know gray is not the most exciting color, but you should be paying attention to that box because it is very important. It will tell you, hey, this major that you've chosen is selective, and then it will give you recommendations what to do from there. Typically, you'll see a recommendation for choosing a selective major as your first choice primary major, and then a recommendation to choose something that's non-selective as your alternate choice major, if that's an option for you. So for example, anyone applying to chemical engineering at UCSB, we'd recommend to include an alternate major in the College of Letters and Science. Or if you're applying to biology with a specialization in bioinformatics at UC San Diego, they're also recommending that you select a non-capped alternate major. And so our friend, the little gray box, will also appear and let you know if your selected major requires a supplemental application or an audition. Any details about that and any appropriate links about that will appear in this box. So for example, we see here nursing at UCLA has a supplemental application. I mentioned our dance and music majors at UCSB have mandatory auditions. So be sure to click on those links, follow those instructions, complete everything you need for that major, because if you miss pieces or you miss deadlines, it could compromise your ability to be admitted into that major. So again, questions about specific supplemental applications, I would recommend going to those specific campuses' admissions officers. So we are making great progress, y'all. We're moving into section 3, academic history. Very important area of the application where you're inputting all of your coursework and grades, all your hard work here. And you may know this is a self-reported section. So the UCs don't want you to send your official transcripts until after you've admitted and after you've chosen to enroll at a particular campus. We do recommend, though, as a little tip, to have an unofficial transcript next to you as you're working through this section, because you want to make sure that everything is accurate. It will get verified eventually, and you don't want to forget about that art class you took freshman year or the grade you got in Math 1 or something like that. So important here to slow down, take your time, because again, not every UC campus will accept changes or updates to your academic history after submission. So going through this section carefully, and we recommend going chronologically as well. You can start with your 7th and 8th grade. If you took any math or language other than English courses in middle school, you can report those here. Otherwise, every other A through G requirement will have to have been taken or planned to be taken during high school. And you'll want to report all of the schools you attended, including any colleges that you've attended, the years that you've attended those schools, making sure to include any summer coursework as well that you've completed at those institutions. So you must report your entire academic history, even if you repeated courses, even if you changed schools. If you only attended one high school, you'd simply add the name of your high school. You can search it by name or the SEEB code, making sure to double check the location, and then just click I finished adding schools. And if you are, I'll say, someone who does have a CCGI school and you have inputted that California statewide student ID, you can also click the button here to import your courses and grades to move that process along a little bit faster. It'll have things kind of pre-uploaded for you, and then you just go through and verify each section to make sure that is accurate. There's no issues with the uploading. But again, this is an optional part of the application, not something that is required. But for each school that you've attended, you can note if there's any specialized curriculum at your school, if it was IB or a magnet program. You list the start and end dates at each school and attach grade levels to each academic year. And then here you'll also find a little checkbox you'll see under under 12th grade. I took summer courses after this year, so you can note if you've taken any classes after that particular year. And then you'll also have the opportunity to report your school's grading system and the term system. The term system referring to the total number of final grades you receive per standard class per year. And then if you are inputting via CCGI with your SSID, this should already be imported, but you want to make sure to verify it before moving on. When we're manually adding classes, though, manually inputting courses, again, we recommend following along your transcripts, starting with the courses that you took during your freshman year. You'll select the academic year, fill out the courses and grades, and then move on to the next year. You'll see here, though, if you checked the box next to I took summer classes during this year, then you'll see that there's a second, separate tab there for the summer sessions. But once you've selected that particular year that we're talking about, you'll see this pop up. So as a California high school with a pre-articulated A through G agreement, you'll see each of the A through G subject areas conveniently laid out for you. And note here, we're only asking you to report your academic coursework. So courses like PE or leadership or being a teaching assistant, you won't report those. You won't see those listed here. So take a look at your transcript, see that first academic class on the year that you're looking at, find that A through G subject area, click on that A through G subject area, and then look for the name of the particular class. You'll then add the grade you earned in that class, and you'll notice here we don't use pluses or minuses, so you just add the letter grade that you see on your transcript. If your course, though, was only one semester, it wasn't a full year, you can select no for that other grade. One other piece you may notice here, for California schools, that honors designation is already pre-designated for you. So NH referring to not honors, HL for honors level, and then AP and IB and so forth. So you won't need to assign those honors levels. So you'll repeat this process for every academic class you took for each year, for each summer, going all the way through your 12th grade. When you get to 12th grade, you'll have different options for your grade type since most schools won't have their fall grades in yet. So you can select IP for in progress for the grades or the courses that you're currently enrolled in right now as a senior in high school, but you haven't received those grades yet. And then you'll also want to make sure to list any planned coursework for the remainder of your senior year. So best estimate of what those classes are. And then for any of those planned classes, making sure to select the PL for planned under the grading option. But once you've finished with your high school coursework, you'll then move on to any college coursework. If you did take any college coursework while you're in high school, if you didn't, you can just skip this section. So if you were doing dual enrollment or something like that, you'd report those classes here. Even if those college courses appear in your high school transcript, even if you physically took those college courses on your high school campus, if the course was administered by a college university, it produces a transcript by them, it must be reported in this section. So you'll first find and then add the college that you want to attend. And then you'll also do those start and end dates, specific terms that you attended, just like you did for your high school. And then again, don't forget to include any terms if you're planning to take any during your senior year, so including those senior year terms as well. You'll then, of course, list out the courses that you took. Again, follow along with what your transcript says, noting the department, the course number, the title, number of units. And in order to count as that CL for college level honors, the course must be at least 3 semester units or 4 quarter units. And here you'll be able to see that you can self-assign the A through G subject area for this course to the best of your ability. If there's any discrepancies that we notice, our evaluators might just adjust that subject area. And with that, that actually reaches the end of the academic history section. Some of you may be wondering, wait a minute, where do I report my UC GPA? Don't worry, we calculate the UC GPA for you on the back end of the application. As a reminder that UC GPA is only calculated with A through G courses taken during 10th and 11th grade and summers surrounding those grades. Extra weight can be given for up to 8 grades received in honors level classes, so AP, IB coursework, UC approved honors coursework, and any transferable college coursework as well. All right, up next we have score. It's the test scores section. In this section, you can report those AP, IB, or English language proficiency exams. These are also self-reported, but if you are admitted and you choose to enroll at a particular UC campus, we'll then ask you to send us those official exam scores. But at this time, they're just self-reported, including those planned scores as well. Gonna pop quiz to no one here, but does UC Admission consider SAT or ACT exams? The answer is no. That's correct, everyone. UCs do not use any SAT or ACT scores for scholarship or admissions purposes. You cannot report them in that initial application, and we don't plan to change that policy at this time. But on the right here, you'll see the rest of that test scores, a sub-tab. And you notice there's not even a section for SAT or ACT scores. So unless you are someone that needs to demonstrate English language proficiency, every other exam is completely optional for the application. So we do encourage you, though, to report any and all of those exam scores that you've earned, even if it's not a passing score, because it does demonstrate your motivation to challenge yourself academically and also go beyond what's minimally required of you. So if you have AP exam scores, you would simply answer yes to this question and add in the exam that you have. You can note if the exam is completed or planned, and do feel free to report those exams that you plan to take during your senior year. And then you'll finally add the name of the exam and the score if it has been received, already taken. You can also note IB exams here if you have taken IB classes in the same fashion, and note as well if you plan to receive that full IB diploma. And I mentioned those English language proficiency exams. These will only be required of you if you are someone who has had less than 3 years of high school instruction in English. So you'll see listed out right there, you'll see listed out here the different options for fulfilling that ELP requirement. And so now we're going to transition a little bit away from that academic heavy information and hear more about who you are outside of the classroom, because again, we use a holistic review at the UCs. And here I'll note it doesn't have to be limited to formal or traditional extracurriculars sponsored by your school. Think about any way that you're using your time productively outside of your classes and your homework and when you're eating or sleeping. So this section is really meant to help us understand your involvements, your use of time throughout high school. When reviewing applications on that holistic review, we are interested in what else you're doing beyond your studies and how you might be a contributing member to a UC campus community. So to reiterate, though, we don't have a preference for what kind of activities you're doing. Could be clubs or sports or volunteering or internships or jobs or maybe extra household responsibilities that we're taking on. Don't try to tell us here what you think we want to hear. Focus on telling us about your true and genuine self. You will have the space here to list up to 20 different activities and awards. Doesn't mean you have to list 20. There's just space for that. Remember, sometimes the equality and the meaning of the activity can have more value than just sheer quantity. Depends on the student, though. You'll be able to designate which of these 6 categories that your activity or that your award falls into. So award or honor, educational prep program, extracurricular, volunteer, work experience, those kinds of things. And we know that some activities might fall under multiple categories. Just try to choose the one that you think best fits. And there's no limit on how many of your 20 can belong to a certain category. And so when you input your activities, you'll notice they do come up as numbered when you input them. So the first one will be number 1. That doesn't mean it's a ranking. We don't view it as a ranking. We won't assume that your number 1 activity is like your most important activity. For each activity, though, we'll ask you about the time spent on the activity. So how many years you're involved in. You can mention if it was something that you did start before high school in your description. But again, you should really be focusing on activities, involvements that were happening recently, so in high school. You can also, though, mention if there are things that you plan to continue through the end of your senior year. Note that the after 12th grade box is really meant for students who have taken gap years. So if you're not taking a gap year, you wouldn't need to click that after 12th box. But for each activity, you'll list the hourly and weekly time spent. And we know this might not be 100% exact, precise number, but try to give us an average of the hours per week that you would spend on that activity. And you'll also have 350 words, or 350 characters, excuse me, big difference there. 350 characters, not words, per activity or award to describe what you did, what you accomplished, what you learned, and also the context of that activity. So if it's an activity or organization that is really specific to your school, you can explain a little bit about what it is, but what its general mission or goal is, but don't feel like you need to explain things that are more universally known. Red Cross, National Honor Society, you don't need to, explain to us what volleyball is, but make sure to spell out any acronyms if you're using them at least that first time. You should primarily be using this box, though, to describe your specific roles and responsibilities if you had any leadership positions or experiences, focusing here really on your involvement and how the activity was unique to you, even if it was like a team or group effort. Here, you don't need to use full sentences. They can be short. They can be bullet points. Should be able to understand what you're saying, but they don't have to be long, drawn-out sentences. Give us those helpful bits of context. So here you'll see, for example, it says, I'm the only freshman on my JV team, or maybe I was one of 400 applicants that applied to this award that actually received this award. So those kind of contextual factors. Because in your activities, whatever those activities are, here are some of the things that we are looking to assess. So your commitment in the activity, the time involved in each year, if this is something you did a year after year, progression, your growth over time, what you learned, and also leadership, how you stepped up, how you challenged yourself, how you demonstrated the qualities of a leader, even if it wasn't like a formal leadership title. So these are some of the qualities that demonstrate meaningful participation in your activity. And so it can be helpful if you try to think about these to clarify some of those points for the admissions reader. In section 6, we're going to take a brief interruption from what's actually used in our admissions review to go over that scholarships and programs tab. This section is not taken under consideration for making admissions decisions. It's still important though, because it can connect you with scholarship opportunities and also campus resources. So in this section, you'll see different categories of scholarships. Each UC campus has different scholarships that are associated with it. So the UC campuses you chose earlier on will trigger this different list of identifying factors that you'll see will pop up in this section. So remember that conditional logic piece here. We do encourage everyone though to click through each category, select any box that applies to you that you identify with, can relate to your location plans, major, career plans, extracurricular, all those kinds of things. There's no limit to how many boxes you can select here, and it never hurts to have the chance to be considered for additional scholarships. So feel free to check anything that applies to you. You won't know, though, if you've received any of these scholarships until after you've been offered admission at the UC campus that was offering that scholarship. Also in this section, though, you'll find some of our campus programs like the Educational Opportunity Program, or EOP. EOP primarily services first generation and income eligible students with different resources. They have counselors, peer mentors, workshops, financial assistance, and more. So really excellent resources. Campuses might have different names for EOP, for the Educational Opportunity Program, but note here on the application, it's going to be listed as EOP. And if you are interested in being a part of EOP, you should just click that box yes and include a brief explanation of why you are interested in EOP. And I don't have a picture up here on the slides, but the Scholarships and Programs tab also does have a section to indicate interest in the UC foster youth programs, if that's something that applies to you. Alrighty, now we get to dive into my personal favorite section to discuss, the personal insight questions, or the PIQs. The PIQs really help complete that picture for us of who you are as a student, who you are as a human being. Now, sometimes people here will refer to the PIQs as the essay questions of the application, and I just want to get rid of that language right off the bat because PIQs for the UC application are not essays. I'll explain what I mean by that in the next few slides. So in the PIQs, you'll see 8 questions to choose from. You will answer exactly 4 of those questions, no more, no less. You truly can pick any 4 though. We don't value one question over the other. So answer the ones that you feel you can speak to, that speak the most to you, to your experiences. And yes, they're numbered, but that's not ranked. That's just reference points for us. But know that the 4 PIQs that you select will be the same 4 that are sent to every UC campus you apply to. You can't pick and choose which questions you go where. So a reminder again to not be campus specific in your responses, because everyone you apply to will be reading at those same answers. And again, not treating the PIQs as essays because they're not meant to be essays. You'll notice there's only maximum 350 words per response, which is relatively short. So you shouldn't feel like you need to write a formal essay with all that structure of an interesting hook and an introduction, a conclusion, and creative transitions, and imagery, and figurative language, and all those things that your English teacher might want to see. We're not looking to grade your writing style. We care about the content of what you're saying, not the style of what you're saying. So instead, we recommend students to think of the PIQs as if they were interview questions that you're just responding to, typing them out. And remember, we don't actually conduct interviews in the UC system. So this is where we can get those pieces of information from you that we haven't learned about you elsewhere and thus far. And so, like I said, we're not English teachers. We're not here to be checking your grammar. Do make sure, though, that it is clear and comprehensible and we are able to read what you're saying. The PIQs should be full sentences, unlike the activities and awards section where you can do more of that bullet point style. You also don't need to worry too much about format, though either. The font and the spacing and other like formatting details do get lost when we download your application, so you don't need to spend a ton of time on that. And you also don't need to repeat the question or restate the prompt in a new way at the beginning of your response, because as you can see highlighted here, you see the question you're answering to at the top of that box. We also see that question when we're reading your response. So this is where you'll be inputting your answer right here under that question. We highly, highly recommend, though, not drafting your responses in the UC application itself. We recommend using some external document, Word doc, Google Doc, whatever works for you. Because remember that application does have a 20-minute timer, so it could log you out if you step away from it and come back. And while it should be saving, again, I don't want anyone to be like freaking out when they come back and see they're logged out. And it's also a bit easier to just edit, maybe get a peer review on your PIQs if you're doing it outside of that UC application. But when you're happy with your responses, you're just going to copy and paste them right back into this box and make sure you are copy and pasting the right response for the right question. So I'll show all 8 questions up here very briefly. Some of y'all may have already taken a look at those and maybe gotten started. I won't go too in depth onto each question, so we do have time for your questions at the end, but a couple things to pay attention to. Note that some questions may have 2 parts to it, so make sure you're answering both parts. And you'll notice some questions do often refer to this like central idea of whether it's leadership or creativity or community or an obstacle or a challenge. For those, you really get to tell us what those concepts mean to you, how you get to define them for us in the sense of how, not like the Webster definition type of thing, but how they relate to you and to your unique experience. Because remember, we want you to tell us about you, what you did, your experiences, what you learned from them, rather than trying to show us what you did. So especially for folks who want to answer those ones about creativity or your talents, you shouldn't be using that space to display your creativity via creative writing or poetry or dropping a link to your SoundCloud or something like that. We want you to tell us about how you use those skills and how you developed them as well. So you've seen the questions, you've read the questions, now up to you to decide which ones you want to answer. Sometimes I find it easiest to start with the ones you definitely don't want to answer, because you do want to think about how you can share different aspects of your life using the 4 PIQs that you picked, sharing new information with us. It's definitely okay to talk about things that you've referenced earlier in the application, but make sure you're taking advantage of the opportunity here in the PIQs to tell us something new about what you're saying, further context, further details, information we haven't already read. So when deciding between questions, sometimes it can be helpful to think about like what 4 aspects of my life do I want to highlight and how do those relate to those questions, just as a recommendation. When you first start writing, it can be easy to maybe just start with a brain dump on the page and then go back and either add more to like get to expand a little bit more on it, or if you need to cut back to get under that 350 word maximum. And if you're able, it can be really helpful to get another set of eyes on your PIQs, whether it's a like trusted mentor, teacher, counselor, parent, or guardian, a friend, because sometimes having that third party perspective helps you think about those questions of what am I missing? Where can I be more clear? What am I really not including that a stranger would need to know in order to completely understand me and my situation, my context? So of course, while it's encouraged to get help on the PIQs, remember they do, of course, have to be in your own words. We do have plagiarism checks. We have caught it in the past, so don't risk your application getting canceled. And I would say taking other people's words wouldn't even benefit you here, because we do really want to hear about the unique you. The PIQs are your chance to be selfish, to tell us about your specific role and impacts. Use those I and me and my statements. If you are going to talk about other people, make sure to always tie it back to their impact on you and what you did with that impact. So your responses and examples should, again, primarily be tied to who you are today in high school. It's okay to mention things that happened before high school, especially if they're either ongoing or maybe the impact is still felt today. But remember to ground it in the present and how those past events or experiences made you who you are now, because we are really using these PIQs to get clarity on these 3 interrelated pieces you see here. So clarity, like I mentioned, clear understanding of who you are, who we're reading about, because we don't really get to talk to you. So thinking about what questions have I not answered? What part of my life is important to me that I haven't been able to share with this admissions reader? Where are the gaps in my story that I can address the PIQs? Context, how you accomplished all of these things in light of the world's environment that you grew up in. So looking for more perspective into your life, the nuances in your home, your school, community that might have impacted your academic and personal life. What resources did you have and took advantage of, or maybe which ones did you not have access to? Finally, the PIQs do give us more depth about you. So while they're not super long responses, you do have more space here to go into detail about those aspects that you haven't touched on elsewhere. And so use the word count here to your advantage, to prioritize giving us those more relevant details that, again, are relevant to who you are as a person and who you are as an applicant and your success at a UC campus. Because the more we can visualize you and your experiences, the better we can understand the type of person that might be joining the UC system. So hopefully that gives you some sense on how we suggest using the PIQs. Have here, though, a couple of things that we do recommend avoiding your PIQs. If you remember from the beginning, though, I said nothing you put down will ever be taken as a negative to the review. It's either a neutral or a positive factor. But since we have a limited word count, there are some things that we recommend avoiding because we just might view those as a missed opportunity to go more in depth onto that context we talked about. So we take everything you say at face value, so we can't assume or guess anything that was left unsaid. So remember that you're spelling out your acronyms, you're not using slang or abbreviations. I know I might be on the younger side of admissions counselors, but even I cannot keep up with the latest slang of the day. So remember that you never know which counselor will be reading your application, so keeping it professional. Some humor is okay, but not being a full-on comedian, it can be a little bit, there are situations where it can be detracting from what you're saying. And people have different senses of humor. I think I'm hilarious. You guys might not think I'm hilarious. So remembering your audience there. For quotes and dialogues, we want to hear your voice. We have a limited amount of space to hear your voice, so we'd rather you not use quotes from someone else's voice, their words. We want to hear about your thoughts. And I know some of y'all may be lovely creative writers, and feel free to tell us about that if you'd like to. But remember, telling us, not showing us, not a creative writing assignment. I don't need your best metaphors or onomatopoeia. So when you talk about like the autumn breeze that is flowing through your hair as you walk to your English class, that doesn't teach me a whole lot about you. So I'd rather you be direct and to the point. We don't need to be in the moment with you to be able to understand what's going on. So scene setting, storytelling, kind of flowery language is part of the things that we do recommend avoiding. So because with 350 words, your space is premium. So if you try to get too deep into those descriptions or too deep into philosophical questions of what is the meaning of life, you won't have the space for that. And you also don't need to restate your prompt or give us formal conclusions again because of that limit on the total number of words that you have. So focus on using that space to get those key details and those main points across. All right, so even after all those 100 questions on the application and the PIQ responses as well, some of y'all may be thinking that there are still gaps. There are still things that I want to say that I think are relevant to my experiences. We have these two sections called additional comments where you can fill those gaps a bit. So there's one right after academic history, one right after the PIQs. These are completely optional. Not writing anything in the additional comments does not hurt your application. Some students use them, some students don't. Either way is fine. They're just that extra opportunity to share any more context, anything else that you think is relevant for us to know. So maybe something unique about your high school curriculum that you want to address, or maybe a change in the trajectory of your academic performance, or a family or personal situation that might have been impacting your academic life. Not limited to those, but just some examples. You shouldn't use the additional comments, though, to continue another PIQ response, to start a brand new PIQ response. We'll be able to notice, and we can't use that, or to put any external links, portfolios, things like that. But congratulations, everyone. We did it. We finally reached the review and submit portion of that application. Even though we've reached the end, the rest of your application is not out of sight, out of mind, because you should be going back and double checking what you wrote. Make sure your birth date is correct, your address is correct, you didn't forget any activities, you didn't copy and paste the same PIQ response for two different questions. Take your time. There are very few sections that you can edit as a reminder. Once you press submit, I should say. The application does have one built-in check, though, regarding your A through G subjects. It will let you know if you're missing any of those minimum A through G requirements. If you're good to go, you'll see all zeros in that column there. But if you are missing anything, you'll see the number that you're missing. So you see that red highlighted there. That means that student is missing 1 year in math. And if that's the case, you can go back and edit to report any classes you might have missed. But if it is truly missing, you'll have to acknowledge that box to acknowledge that it is missing. And then you'll certify that, yes, everything I've reported in my application is my own work. It is all true and accurate. You also need to have a form of payment ready to pay your application fees. You can pay by mail or you can pay online by credit card, and make sure if you were eligible for that fee waiver that you are clicking the box that you are accepting that fee waiver right here. Once that payment's gone through and you're truly done, you'll get a confirmation email with all the campuses you applied to. Here's where you're going to want to make note of your UC application ID and your UC application login in case there are some things you want to make updates to or review your applications. Again, there are certain things like contact information, campuses you want to apply to if the deadline hasn't passed that you can go back in and update. But having your UC application ID is also relevant because when campuses reach out to you about setting up your particular portal, and your portal is where you typically see and receive your admissions decisions, they'll be asking you for things like your UC application ID to make sure that your identity is verified. UC campuses will start to reach out about these portals between November and January. Don't stress out if you haven't heard and it's early January. Some campuses might not reach back out to you until late January, and we do all reach out at different times. So it's okay if you haven't heard from everyone by the start of the new year. But make sure you are checking your email and that you are paying attention to those things so you can set up your portal accurately. And as far as the deadlines for the applications, we talked about that at the beginning. This year, you have until December 2nd. I please ask that you don't wait until the last 5 minutes of December 2nd so you don't tempt any bad karma with your Wi-Fi or your technology and something disastrous happens. Give yourself some wiggle room there. Also, make sure that you're getting ready to get started on that FAFSA or that California Dream Act application to apply for financial aid. Those should open in December with a priority deadline of March 2nd. Most of the aid of the UCs is need-based aid for California residents. So this is our primary avenue for providing that need-based aid, hopefully shortly after you receive your admissions decisions. UCs release their admissions decisions throughout the month of March, again, in those applicant portals. Probably are going to be different days in March. We're just kind of all spread out throughout March. And the SIR deadline to commit to a particular campus, if you're a freshman applicant, should be May 1st. Note, not until after that deadline, when you've submitted your SIR, you've picked one particular campus, is when you need to start worrying about sending us those official documents, test scores, transcripts, things like that. So I understand it is a long road ahead, but there are a lot of resources out there to support you with your journey. Your teachers, your counselors, as admissions officers, we are here for you and happy to help with any questions that come up. We do have more webinars, some like this, others about UC applications, some go just into the PIQs, your activities and awards. You can find those on our UCSB admissions website if you want to hear from one of my colleagues more about the UC application. We have a UC application playlist as well that goes step by step through the UC application, and you can always refer back to that on YouTube as you're working through it. That PIQ worksheet on the left there is also really helpful. It has some like guiding questions about the different PIQ responses. So I recommend checking that out as well. Moral of my story, though, I totally understand the application can feel overwhelming at first and the process can be stressful. Hopefully this illuminated some things for you, but we really do want to keep helping you. We do want to stay connected with you. Your mentors want to help you. So take advantage of that help so that you feel as comfortable and confident with your college admissions journey as possible. All right, I know that was a lot of talking from me, and I'm sure you have questions, so I'm happy to take those questions now. Yeah, so Haley, if you wouldn't mind reading them aloud to me, and then I can answer from here. I don't quite hear you. I'm not sure if that's just me.
Haley, we can't hear you. No.
Can't hear you now, but I think I got it all open and set. So I'll just go ahead and answer those questions. Yeah, thank you though. All right, so there's a question here on, is there any drawbacks to applying undeclared major? This will depend, one, on the campus you're applying to, and then two, what maybe your like career, like long-term career intentions are. I'd say if you're interested in some of our more competitive programs, engineering at most campuses tends to be pretty competitive, and you kind of in the back of your mind want to be an engineer, but you apply as an undeclared major, that can have some drawbacks. In terms of the admissions process, because it can be hard to change majors into engineering. But as far as just sheer admissions, at UCSB, our undeclared major is in the College of Letters and Science, where we're not selected by major. So there's no negative or positive in terms of selecting undeclared as your chosen major. For admissions purposes, you'd have the same chance of being admitted. That's generally similar across UC campuses, but there are some variations. What I recommend, either reaching out to the UC campuses directly, or the UC Quick Reference Guide has a like FAQ section at the bottom with the answers that every UC campus would answer for that question. And it has a question on like what if applying undeclared affects your chances of admission. So I'd say at UCSB, if you're interested in the College of Letters and Science, no, does not affect it, but check in with a particular campus. Something to note on our campus, if you come in as undeclared, but there's like, you wanted to take like biology classes or economics classes, and you wanted to try out those majors, students who are in those majors get first priority for those seats. So they will have a bit of an easier access into those classes. Undeclared will be in like that second round of pastimes. So there might be seats that are already taken. So if you have an inkling towards a subject, at UCSB, I usually recommend to just select that major on the UC application because, again, College of Letters and Science, we're not selecting by major, and you can always switch majors pretty easily. But that's a very UCSB specific answer. All right. My child attended summer school before ninth grade to be able to take an extra elective on her high school transcripts. It lists a different high school for summer school, even though it was located at her high school. Which one should she put? That is a good question there. I'm actually going to drop my email very quickly in the chat. For courses taken before ninth grade, as a general rule, because you can't select before ninth grade as a summer on the UC application, we usually recommend putting those in the fall term and then just writing a note in the additional comment section. But it's interesting that it's listed as a different high school. So I'm going to drop my email in here so that if you want to send us like screenshots of what you're looking at so we can give better recommendations, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to gauge just from there. But when is the time to apply for college? So if you are someone that, if you're a senior right now and you're planning to attend college right after high school, then you'd be applying this fall. So your application deadline would be December 2nd. If you're someone that's not a senior right now, maybe applying later, it's typically in the fall before the fall you want to start. All right. Done there. SAT and ACT scores are not required or not accepted, excuse me, for scholarship or admissions purposes at the UCs. And then question on activities and awards. Do you only report activities and awards from grades 9 through 12, or can you report awards and activities from earlier? You'll just be reporting things that you're at least continuing through 9th and 12th, through 9th through 12th grade. So maybe let's say you're a soccer player and you took soccer 9th through 12th, but you started it when you were 5 years old. You can mention that in the activities and awards section in that box. But if it was something like I only did soccer through 6th grade, then I wouldn't report that on the UC application, if that makes sense. Do you have to finish the application in one sitting, or can you do it part by part? Definitely recommend doing it part by part. Be a lot to do in one sitting. You can click that save and continue button when you've reached the end of your time, you want to go take a break, save and continue, log out, and then just log back in when you want to keep working on it. All right, what do you do if you exceed the timer trying to answer a question? So the timer is inactivity. So if you're actively typing in the application, it won't be logging you out. It's more if you type for a bit, then step away, go have dinner, you come back, it might be logged out. So shouldn't be something you have to worry about, but if you want to keep resetting that timer, the save and continue button will also do that. All right. Can the PIQ essay be related to a program that I did back in middle school but had a lasting impact and motivated me in high school? I think it's definitely okay to reference that program and how it impacted you and how it motivated you, but make sure that your PIQ is still addressing actions that you are currently taking and what you are like currently involved in. So maybe this was like a motivating factor that led you to pursue other opportunities or other activities that you took advantage of. So definitely can reference back to it, but I wouldn't maybe spend the entire PIQ talking about your middle school self. Remember to ground back in your high school self. How many letters of recommendation does the UC accept? So we will not accept letters of recommendation unless you're specifically asked for it. Certain programs might ask for it. The College of Creative Studies at UCSB, some of their majors ask for letters of recommendation. The exact number will be listed on that College of Creative Studies application, but in general, we're not accepting letters of recommendation. All right. Should my child take the AP Physics exam, even though it won't be considered at UCSB Wilpinjong College of Engineering requires physics series in the AP exam? Gotcha. So the AP Physics, I think this question is asking about should I take it? Should I take the AP Physics exam even though it doesn't give me college credit towards my major at that UC campus? We look at AP exams, whether you're planning to take them, whether you've took them, have a passing score or non-passing score, as a way for you to be challenging yourself beyond what is minimally required of you. So that's how we look at them in our admissions review. So that can be something to consider there. Typically, it depends on the campus to campus, but sometimes even if the AP exam score doesn't get you a course equivalency credit, it still may give you like graduation credit towards your overall graduation at UCSB or UC campus. So it still may count for units, even if you're not like getting out of physics 3A or something like that. So that will be a consideration up to the student, up to their family, but just some things to consider there. All right, answered that one. Oh yeah, I have a question here on, does SAT score count after admission for courses evaluation? Good question here. So little note for everyone is you can actually submit SAT and ACT scores after you've submitted your initial application. So after you've submitted your initial application, you can log back in, and there's a link on there when you've logged back in to update test scores. And one of those test scores you update can be your SAT and ACT scores, but they're not allowed to be submitted in the initial application because, again, they're not at all used in admissions review. But if you report those AP or those SAT and ACT exam scores after that initial submission, we can use those for course placement. So like course placement in a math class or something like that. You can use SAT and ACT scores for course placement. Yeah, for ELC, top 9% of the class, is it for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade? That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I'm not going to commit 100% if 9th grade is included in that ranking. It is an evaluation that happens at the end of your junior year. So you so UCs wouldn't be included, like your 12th grade performance in that. But again, I'm going to drop my email here just so I can make sure to give you the true and accurate answer on that one. And then so feel free to email me your questions, and then I can just double check some things and get back to y'all. But yeah, so do UCs offer early decisions or early actions? The UCs do not offer early decision or early action programs. So it truly does not matter when you apply within our submission window. There's no benefit to applying earlier on besides just your own personal peace of mind. So there's no programs like that in that sense. All right, we have just a couple minutes left. Some questions popping in. So would you list an award from College Board under award section? Yeah, you could list that award under there. If it was like an exam score or something like that, you could list that in the test score section, but an award you can definitely list in that activities and award section. I think I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Hello, this is Betsy, the interpreter. There is a question in Spanish. I'm going to site translate. It's, if I fill out one application, can I send that to all of the ones I want to apply to?
That is correct. It is one single UC application, no matter how many of the campuses that you are applying to. So you'll see in the campuses and major section where we had that map of California, you just click the box next to all of the campuses you want to apply to, and everything else you only have to do once. So everything you put down in academic history, everything you put down in your personal insight question, your activities and awards, all of that gets sent off to every campus you applied to. And then how do we, there's a question here, how do we know if a student is in the top 9%? That is something you can also check after you've submitted that UC application. So you can like log back in and then view ELC status, another one, a link on there. I'll note on guaranteed placement, it is placement at a UC campus, but not any UC campus. It tends to be a UC campus that has space historically that's been UC Merced. So if you apply to UCs and you're an ELC student and you're not admitted to any of the UCs you apply to, you would then be offered space at a campus where there is space. So UC Merced, historically.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you guys so much for attending. I know Haley's having a little bit of trouble speaking. So I just wanted to thank you, Riley, for giving us this amazing presentation from UCSB and just the UC application overall. And I'd like to thank all of the students and families for attending. Again, this recording will be available on the Simi Valley Unified School District website within this week or next. So please make sure that you check in with us about that. But again, I just want to thank you, Riley, for giving us this amazing presentation and helping us support our students as always.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And for any questions that we didn't get to, the admissions@ucsb.edu email will go to all of us admissions counselors, so we'd be happy to answer your questions there. But thank you all so much for having me.
All righty. Thank you so much. And from here, we'll conclude this presentation. Thank you.